Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to part 4 of What If I Was Reborn in Attack on Titan as a civilian nobody with the gamer system. Let the tale begin. Chapter 61, Petra and the others had already served in the Survey Corps for 2 years. They knew Hang Zoe's personality all too well. Once she set her sights on someone, that person would never know peace again. They exchanged glances that all said the same thing, good luck surviving this, before quickly slipping away. Even Aluo, usually the first to run his mouth, vanished without a word. Locke sighed inwardly. Troublesome. Hang approached, eyes gleaming with manic excitement. What is it this time, Captain Hang? He asked, resigned. Heh, after a full day and night of live experiments, we've made incredible progress. Locke gave her a flat stare. Are you even a little curious? Hang pressed. Curious or not, Locke replied with a small smile, you'll tell me anyway, won't you? Yes, she admitted, nodding. That alone was enough to raise her estimation of him again. Every conversation with Locke ended the same way. He seemed helpless, but somehow he always kept the upper hand. Hang had the enthusiasm, but Locke never actually let her drag him anywhere he didn't choose to go. Fine. Let's see what you've discovered, Locke said. At the very least, he wanted to gauge just what this mad scientist of the Corps was capable of after a single night. Not long after, they reached the tent where the captive Titan was restrained. The 4-meter-class Titan knelt on the ground, limbs severed and bound, its mouth forced open with thick ropes. It could do nothing but glare with lifeless eyes. Thorough work, Locke muttered. He stepped closer without hesitation, ignoring Moblet's anxious warning. Locke, that's too close. The Titan lunged instantly, jaws snapping forward. Bang! Locke's boot struck upward, shattering its jaw. Teeth cracked, hanging uselessly. The Titan reeled, unable to close its mouth again. That was close. I almost got bitten, Locke said with a faint smile. To Moblet and the others, however, the image was chilling. In front of the crippled Titan, Locke looked far more like the monster. A decisive kick, Hang commented, unfazed. It really shows how instinctively they crave human flesh. She tried copying him, landing her own kick on the writhing Titan, but compared to Locke's strike, hers was almost playful. All right, Locke cut in. Tell me your findings. Hang straightened, her tone sharpening. First, we confirmed that Titans can't communicate, or at least this one can't. Second, we verified your earlier observation. Their activity weakens at night and returns at dawn. She leaned in close to the Titan's face, gesturing at its throat. Third, though they appear to breathe, they don't actually need air. We sealed its mouth and nose with cloth for a full hour, it didn't die. Which suggests they might draw energy from sunlight, like plants. Surviving on sunlight alone, Locke murmured. Truly strange creatures. I know, right? Hang's voice pitched high with glee. Facing something this bizarre, I don't feel tired at all. I want to keep studying forever. But reality doesn't allow it. You're leaving soon, Locke said, already guessing. She nodded. The base is nearly complete. Most of the remaining work is simple, and there's no major threat. But nearly half our supplies never arrived. Enough must be left for those staying behind. Which means... She trailed off, but Locke understood. Do you know who will be stationed here? He asked. His first instinct was to volunteer, but then he remembered what was to come. If he stayed, he might miss his chance to prevent the future breach. Reluctantly, he set that thought aside. I asked to stay, Hang admitted with a hint of regret. But Commander Irwin had other considerations. He refused. We'll all return inside the walls together. Her eyes drifted back to the restrained Titan, whom she'd already named Oda, with visible reluctance. They couldn't bring it back alive. But the precedent was set, next time they could capture more near the walls. There were still so many tests left to run, pain tolerance, regenerative thresholds, and more. Locke's expression stiffened. Hold on. You're not planning to experiment on me, are you? Of course, Hang said brightly. We're comrades, after all. Locke took a slow breath, fighting down the urge to curse. Thanks. You're welcome. That's what I'm here for, Hang replied cheerfully, completely oblivious. Locke stared at her in silence. Chapter 62, that night, the Titan named Oda completed its final mission. It confirmed what the Survey Corps suspected: Titans can feel pain, though their reactions are far slower than humans. As for the fatal weak point, only the back of the neck seemed critical. Even when Hang Zoe drove a spear deep into Oda's heart, the Titan barely flinched. That alone spoke volumes. Of course, with only one subject, nothing could be declared as a final fact. The results remained inconclusive, but their significance was undeniable. It established a precedent: the Survey Corps could now capture living Titans for research. This breakthrough eased some of the Corps' lingering fear toward Titans, effectively killing two birds with one stone. The next afternoon, after leading a few personnel to continue improving the base and assigning Moblet's team to defend it, Captain Keith led the return journey. What came back was not just supplies and weapons, but the remains of comrades. Though this expedition counted as a partial success, thanks to Locke's arrival, the mood remained grim. Nearly 200 soldiers were lost, veterans who had braved countless missions outside the walls, elite members of the Corps. Their friends, siblings, sons, fathers. How would their loved ones react to this devastating news? How could they face their gazes again? Each soldier carried a heavy heart. But duty allowed no time for grief. As a red signal gun fired to the right, they stiffened, drew their blades, and prepared for battle. Beyond the city walls, there was no protection, only themselves and each other. Snicked. Locke's blade cut clean across a Titan's neck, nearly severing its head. He landed lightly on its shoulder, emotionless. Aluo, Locke said, glancing at the man perched on the opposite shoulder. I win again. TSK, luck, Aluo replied with a smirk, though his eyes betrayed respect. No doubt having Locke as an ally increased their safety immensely. Though Aluo's chances to shine alone were fewer now, he accepted it as a necessary compromise. Without wasting words, they returned to their horses and caught up with the group ahead. Both remained alert, prepared to support whichever team faltered. Levi remained close to Keith and Irwin, the two strongest in single combat, while Locke and Aluo were assigned as flexible support. Their coordination only grew sharper with every mission. Aluo, once eager to lead the charge, adapted quickly to being Locke's assistant. The unspoken understanding between them was simple: Locke led, Aluo followed. 2 days passed. At last, the faint outline of the city walls appeared on the horizon. A quiet sigh of relief spread. I'm back, Locke murmured. But unlike the others, he didn't relax. His shoulders tensed further. He hadn't met Reiner or his men outside the walls. The catastrophe couldn't be prevented in advance. Now, all he could do was brace for it. I will never let anything happen to you, Locke said with grim determination. His hand clenched the reins so tightly that they squeaked. Petra, ever concerned, moved to comfort him, but ELD cut her off quietly. Let him think on it himself. Don't disturb him now. Aluo and Gunther nodded in agreement. Petra hesitated, then stayed silent. What none of them knew was that Locke had already noticed their subtle shift in attitude. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. A bit of warmth flickered in his chest. Unbeknownst to Locke, Commander Keith, Vice Commander Irwin, and Captain Levi, 3 of the Survey Corps' most esteemed leaders, were discussing him at the front. In his first mission outside the walls, Locke single-handedly defeated 15 Titans and assisted in taking down 5 more, Irwin observed, impressed. His observation, tactical execution, and battlefield decision-making are exceptional. Keith nodded in agreement. He deserves proper training. His accomplishments alone qualify him for promotion. Levi remained stoic, though a flicker of approval passed his eyes. But when their thoughts turned to Locke's young age, and the royal government's hostility toward the Survey Corps, a shadow crossed their faces. Levi quietly spat. Disgusting. Chapter 63, next. The Survey Corps is back. The front gate is about to open. Accompanied by a loud shout, the long silent bell of Shiganshina district rang once more. A crowd quickly gathered at the city gate, watching the massive entrance slowly rise. Some faces were curious, some expectant, some prayed, and others wore expressions of disdain. Under countless gazes, the Survey Corps, led by Captain Keith, rode into the city. This time, no wounded soldiers were dragging themselves forward, no defeated expressions, no despair. Instead, the members of the Survey Corps held their heads high, their eyes firm and resolute. They had reason for confidence. They made history. Not only did they establish an outpost deep beyond the wall, but they gathered valuable new information on Titans, laying the groundwork for future expeditions. The people around could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Compared to previous missions where losses were catastrophic, this time the majority returned. The public whispered, was the Survey Corps mission a success? Even a few bold souls dared to voice doubt, glancing at the triumphant-looking Keith. Captain Keith, tell us what you found. But, following orders, no one revealed a single detail. Locke stood in the team, his face hidden beneath a hood. After the bloodshed, he radiated a cold, silent aura, a vacuum that no one dared approach. As the team pressed forward toward the Shiganshina base for repairs, a familiar voice broke through the tension. Locke, over here! Locke! Armin, Aaron, and Mikasa waved excitedly. Locke pulled back his hood, smiled faintly, and waved at them, though he didn't stop. They followed the group, exhausted after 2 continuous days of travel, nerves strained outside the wall. Upon entering the base, they almost collapsed from fatigue. Meanwhile, in the captain's office. You want to ask for leave? And take your equipment with you? Keith, Irwin, and Levi were all surprised. But once they remembered Shiganshina was Locke's hometown, the picture became clear, though still puzzling. Why take your gear out? Irwin asked, calm but curious. Locke met his gaze without hesitation. I want to upgrade the equipment, he replied bluntly. Upgrade? Didn't I tell you I was a blacksmith before? Locke feigned innocence. The 3 officers exchanged subtle glances. Even if Locke was a blacksmith, how much skill could he really have? Still, they'd witnessed his talent, unlimited potential. Without further question, they permitted his request. After leaving the base station with his gear in tow, Armin, Aaron, and Mikasa ran toward him. Locke, are you hurt? Do I look injured? He replied, rubbing Armin's head out of habit. Just as he moved to proceed, Mikasa stood silently by his side. Locke shook his head lightly and ruffled her hair without favoritism. This little girl, so pure, so quiet. Along the way, Armin became an incessant torrent of questions, wondering aloud about the world beyond the wall and the battles with Titans. Locke, careful not to reveal too much, gave them a brief account of their time outside the wall, the giants they'd encountered. The 3 listened with wide eyes, their curiosity insatiable. As Armin pressed on, never stopping his barrage of inquiries, Locke suddenly wanted to rip off his sweaty socks and stuff them into the boy's mouth. Having barely escaped the relentless questioning of Hang, he now faced 100,000 questions ghost again. It was too exhausting. Chapter 64, Locke drew his sword from its sheath. The cold glint of the blade made Armin and the others shift uneasily, an inexplicable heaviness pressing on their chests. Boy, did you fight a Titan this time? Uncle Harry frowned. Though he mostly forged agricultural and household tools and only occasionally inspected garrison gear, the seasoned blacksmith's eyes missed nothing. He immediately noticed the abnormality, the blade was faintly stained with blood. There are thousands of Titans outside the wall who love to eat humans, Locke said calmly. Fighting them isn't the goal, but it's inevitable. There was a maturity in his tone that belied his age. If one didn't know him well, it would be hard to believe this boy was only 14. The brat's grown up a lot after that trip outside, Uncle Harry grunted, grinning. He raised his large, callous hand and clapped Locke on the shoulder. I'm glad you came back safe. But why draw your sword on us? I want you to check if you can improve its sharpness, Locke said frankly. With his own blacksmithing skills, Locke wasn't yet capable of modifying a weapon of this class, but Uncle Harry, as a senior blacksmith, surely could. If the blade could be improved, it would greatly increase his chances in battle. Uncle Harry didn't reply immediately. He took the ultra-hard steel blade in both hands, gripping the hilt with one, the tip with the other, and bent it into a deep arc. Uncle, don't break Locke's sword. Armin blurted out. No, Locke reassured him. The flexibility of ultra-hard steel is excellent. It won't break easily. Hearing that, Armin, Mikasa, and Eren leaned closer, curiosity gleaming in their eyes. Locke himself felt a faint pulse in his chest, a strange thrill, a desire to wield this weapon fully, to feel its lethal edge and motion. Uncle Harry ignored their chatter, studying the blade with full concentration. He was familiar with ultra-hard steel from inspecting similar equipment for the garrison, but this was the first time he treated a blade like this with genuine care and precision. His dedication said it all. He was serious about helping Locke upgrade his weapon. After all, if Locke had stronger gear, his survival chances against Titans would rise. Locke stood silently aside, not interrupting. Meanwhile, Armin crouched beside the workbench, examining Locke's three-dimensional maneuver gear with bright eyes. Mikasa and Eren observed closely too. After all, this was humanity's only weapon against the Titans, and few could resist the urge to understand it better. After several minutes, Uncle Harry straightened, a grin forming under his beard. You're lucky, boy. I studied blades like this in my youth. Thinking back now, some of those old methods might actually work. Thank you, Uncle Harry, Locke said with a faint smile. Don't get too happy yet, Harry said, pointing toward a pile of dull iron blanks in the corner. You don't expect me to use that scrap to upgrade your weapon, do you? Of course not. Uncle, name your price. If I can get it, I'll pay it, Locke said, patting his chest. These materials aren't easy to find, Harry muttered, rubbing his beard. They're strategic resources controlled by the government. But with your current standing, it shouldn't be too hard, depends on how much the Survey Corps values you. While speaking, he moved to the cleaner table in the shop, pulled out a sheet of paper, and began scribbling down a list. Locke leaned over to glance at it, immediately understanding. Uncle, you don't mean to forge an entirely new blade, do you? What else? Harry said, scowling. Don't ask stupid questions. Locke sighed. It really was a stupid question. Ultra-hard steel, once fused with metal, couldn't be separated without destroying its inner structure. Trying to dissolve the bamboo would ruin its flexibility, turning the blade into a rigid lump of iron, useless for combat or storage. Locke's ears reddened slightly as he realized the obviousness of it. Uncle Harry scolded him again, leaving him speechless. Armin, Eren, and Mikasa burst out laughing. Locke's glare in their direction was nothing short of lethal. Chapter 65. After receiving the material list and seeing dozens of items with detailed specifications, Locke couldn't help thinking the old forging master might not even be able to complete this task. The time and effort required were immense. A skilled blacksmith needed years of experience. In this era, without any modern measuring tools, everything, from temperature control to hammer precision and quenching, depended entirely on the smith's naked eye and instinct. In terms of strength, Locke had no issue. He far exceeded the standard. But in experience, he was only 14, and he'd been in this world for less than half a year. He lacked the years of accumulated technique that true craftsmanship demanded. It would take time to bridge that gap. Just as Locke considered postponing this long-delayed goal, he received orders. His ultra-hard steel blade could indeed be upgraded, and both its sharpness and toughness would improve significantly. Keith and Irwin acted decisively, ordering Locke to remain in the Shiganshina district to oversee the process. Do you really want me doing this? Locke muttered, watching the Survey Corps troops depart. Oruo's smug expression didn't help. Well, you used to be a rising star in the Survey Corps, Oruo teased. Now you're a foreman in a blacksmith shop. How's that feel? Oh, wait, my mistake. You're just supervising. If it were anyone else, Locke would have ignored the comment. But since Uncle Harry was the one leading the forge this time, Locke would likely be swinging hammers again soon. Shaking his head, Locke exhaled and steadied himself. Somewhere deep inside, a strange sense of purpose pulled him toward the forge, like destiny. Forging Master. Mission objective: become a forging master. Mission reward: strength +5, coordination +5, weapon mastery +5. Mission penalty: none. Mission time: 3 months, 13 days. Recalling the long-forgotten mission prompt, Locke glanced at the remaining time. He might just make it. There was no rule that said he had to complete the forging process alone. His first mission had succeeded only thanks to Uncle Harry's help. This time, the same loophole applied. An opportunity had appeared, and Locke resolved to take it. He remembered that the Titans would breach the city only after the Corps left the walls. There was still time. Applying to stay stationed in Shiganshina would be a problem for later. For now, he turned toward the base, prepared to oversee the upgrades. Keith, true to form, acted quickly. Once word spread that the ultra-hard steel blade could be enhanced, the commander immediately set up a temporary workshop, promoted Uncle Harry to head blacksmith, and gave him full authority to recruit assistants and use the Corps' supplies. The order was simple: complete it as soon as possible. For the Survey Corps, who fought Titans beyond the walls, better equipment was not a luxury, but survival. Naturally, Keith and Irwin paid close attention. As for why Locke had been ordered to stay behind rather than report the progress to the royal government, there was a deeper reason. At the front of the Survey Corps column, "Commander, you seem to value Locke quite a bit," Irwin said, his tone deliberate. Keith gave him a sidelong glance. "In terms of how much you value that boy, you're second only to me." Irwin nodded slightly. "My intuition tells me he'll become the pillar of the Legion one day." Keith's eyes drifted briefly toward Levi. "And here I thought Levi was your favorite." "Levi's strong," Irwin admitted, "but he's suited to lead on the field, not the Corps itself." Then, lowering his voice, he added, "The government again?" "As expected, nothing escapes you, Fox," Keith said with a faint, bitter smile before turning grim. "The military police are on the attack once more. After our heavy losses beyond the wall, and all those wasted supplies, the government's patience is wearing thin." He sighed deeply. Even though this expedition achieved partial success, those short-sighted bureaucrats will never acknowledge it. "My time as commander is almost up." "Commander." Irwin hesitated, his tone heavy with unspoken thoughts. After a long pause, he offered quietly, "We could appeal to the garrison corps." "It's useless." Keith shook his head. "The royal government never cared about us. Their move against the Corps was planned long ago. I'll have to step down." Turning to Irwin, his expression softened. "From here on out, the Survey Corps will be your responsibility." "I'll do my best," Irwin said solemnly. But his heart was heavy. The Titan crisis was far from over, and humanity remained trapped like livestock behind stone walls. Inside, factions schemed for power while the king turned a blind eye to reality. Could such a government ever bring true freedom? Irwin deeply understood Keith's helplessness and his good intentions toward Locke. Reporting the weapon project to the king would only have placed Locke in danger. Leaving him in Shiganshina was Keith's way of protecting him. Chapter 66, Locke's life in the Shiganshina district gradually settled into a steady rhythm. No more exhausting night marches, no more constant fear of Titan ambushes, no more hollow confusion after every kill, only the quiet satisfaction of purposeful work each day. Aaron, Armin, and Mikasa often visited his home. The 3 children, endlessly curious about the world beyond the walls, bombarded him with questions about the landscapes he'd seen. They'd heard that the outside world teemed with life, vast mountains, deep forests, and trees that soared higher than the city walls themselves. Their imaginations ran wild at the thought of such beauty and danger. Armin, ever timid, shuddered when Locke described the titans that roamed those lands. Aaron's eyes burned brighter, filled with the desire to see it all for himself. Mikasa stayed silent as always, her calm expression betraying little, but her quiet glances made it clear that, to her, nothing mattered more than the safety of those she cared for. Outside of these visits, Locke spent most of his time at Uncle Harry's forge, or at the homes of Harry and Aaron's families. Aunt Martha and Aunt Carla treated him like family, their warmth offering a brief refuge from the harsh reality of the world. Locke, ever considerate, would bring food and supplies as small tokens of gratitude. For a while, he felt something he hadn't known in a long time, a sense of home. But reality remained unforgiving. He knew there was only one path forward, to keep moving. The sound of steel. Ding, ding, ding. At dawn, the rhythmic clash of hammer on metal echoed from the Survey Corps' forge. Half-asleep guards stirred from their posts, exchanging weary looks. It started again, one yawned. Been a month already, hasn't it? Yeah. I actually admire the kid. Gets up before sunrise every single day. I couldn't last 2 days doing that. In weather like this? I'd rather stay in bed till noon. Same here. Once my shift's done, I'm passing out. Together? Roll over. Right. Meanwhile, inside the forge, Locke worked shirtless, muscles taut as he hammered a glowing red piece of iron with unwavering focus. The block had been 30 centimeters thick when he began. Now, reduced to the size of a clenched fist, its impurities had been nearly beaten out. Even with his immense physical strength, the process trained him. An hour and a half later, sweat streamed down his face. Uncle Harry entered with a group of blacksmiths right on schedule. Seeing the young man's progress, one of them whistled. Still as diligent as ever, that one. Yeah, another chuckled. If I'd had that kind of drive when I was young, I'd be a master by now, instead of arguing with Harry every day. Harry snorted. Big beard, you want another rematch? Sure thing. We're tied 50-50, remember? Keep dreaming. Laughter filled the workshop, but Locke barely noticed. He wiped the sweat from his brow and said calmly, Everyone, let's begin. The banter died down immediately. Since Locke said it, no more arguing today, one joked. Harry folded his arms. That should have been my line. Their childish rivalry drew another round of laughter before everyone turned back to work. The forge settled into its steady rhythm again, the hiss of bellows, the crack of steel, the glow of embers reflecting in determined eyes. Harry and the others studied the iron Locke had refined and exchanged nods of approval. They remembered that just a month ago, his forging skill had been raw and unsteady. Now, his control and precision were near perfect. The next steps belonged to the masters. Each of the veteran blacksmiths had decades of experience, all handpicked by Charlie, one of the Corps' senior smiths. Their craftsmanship surpassed Locke's by far. Watching them work, every motion deliberate, every strike perfectly timed, Locke could only sigh softly. In comparison, I'm still far behind, he murmured. Still, he didn't stop watching. He studied every gesture, memorized every adjustment, every flick of the wrist and change in heat color. Whenever he could, he joined in, assisting with the quenching, shaping, and tempering, determined that when the ultra-hard steel alloy was finally merged, nothing would go wrong. A full month of repetition and refinement had brought them here. Today, everything felt aligned, the timing, the rhythm, the instinct of craftsmen who knew success was close. Finally, after hours of precise work, the reforged blade took shape. Its spine was jet black, its edge gleamed silver-white under the forge light, radiating a sharp, cold brilliance even before sharpening. It was the unmistakable feel of success. Only one step remained. The bearded blacksmith, renowned as the best grinder in the district, stepped forward. With delicate precision, he began the final sharpening, the rasp of stone on metal echoing through the quiet forge. No one spoke, every eye stayed on the blade. 40 minutes later, as the last stroke was drawn and the edge gleamed like a mirror, a soft chime rang in Locke's ears. System notification. Mission progress updated. Chapter 67, Ding! The equipment grade has reached master level. Mission accomplished. The system sound rang clearly in Locke's ears, but the expected ability bonus did not appear. His expression froze for about 3 seconds, before another system sound followed. Ding! The host's participation rate is detected to be less than 70%. The reward is being recalculated. Ding! The reward calculation is complete. Host strength +3, coordination +3, weapon mastery +3. Feeling the subtle changes in his body, Locke breathed a sigh of relief. He clenched his fists, tested his own strength, and smiled slightly. At that moment, Uncle Harry approached him, holding the completed upgraded black gold bamboo sword, his eyes noticeably nervous. This project represented the pinnacle of their collective blacksmithing skill. Every process, every improvement, every choice of material had been pushed to the extreme. If the result did not meet Locke's needs, there would be no way but to abandon the effort. Locke, how is the result this time? Harry asked with an expectant smile, handing over the sword. Locke returned the smile as he took the weapon, feeling the warmth of the handle in his hands. He ran his fingers along the blade. The touch of the cold, smooth metal was intoxicating. He tested its flexibility by carefully bending the blade. It showed far greater toughness than before. With Locke's own strength, it was easy to bend the blade to a visible curve. He increased the force further. The curvature nearly reached 70 degrees without the blade breaking. We adjusted the forging ratio of black gold bamboo to steel, greatly improving flexibility without sacrificing hardness, Harry explained. Compared to before, the blade's toughness increased by nearly 30%. It's far less likely to break now, and the chance of wear is reduced significantly. A very fine blade. Locke praised, though deep in his mind, he knew the true test was in actual combat. He eyed the massive iron block standing a few steps away, a meter high, over half a meter thick. Under the astonished eyes of the blacksmiths, Locke strode directly to the block and swung the sword with full force. Sniff! With a resonant tearing sound, the blade sank deep into the iron block and pierced all the way through. Ching! He pulled out the blade with effort and studied the iron block. It was almost split in two. Holding the knife up before his eyes, Locke carefully examined the blade. Only minor scratches marred the surface. Over 90% of the blade remained intact. If equipment is this strong, then as long as the user's strength is sufficient, cutting through a 1 or 2 centimeter thick crystal armor shouldn't be a problem, he thought. Even if full penetration wasn't possible, at least the blade wouldn't bend or break like in the original plot. Locke's eyes glinted. As for those mindless titans, with this level of sharpness, as long as I can reach their necks, they won't last long. No need to waste effort, just strike once. He knew that if the Survey Corps were equipped with this upgraded black gold bamboo sword, their chances of survival against titans would increase by several percentage points. Of course, the premise remained that the operator's skill in using the three-dimensional maneuver gear was up to standard. Otherwise, no amount of advanced equipment would make a difference. Coming back to reality, Locke noticed everyone staring at him. He smiled and said confidently, "Everyone, we succeeded." The scene remained silent for a moment before erupting in cheers. Finally succeeded. This past month, I've thought about forging processes day and night, while eating, sleeping, walking, even going to the toilet. I'm finally free. It's no easy feat. I'm going home to rest. I won't touch forging for half a month. Me too. I don't care how high the pay is, I won't take this kind of job again. It's way too time-consuming. I'm old. Yes, can't refuse to get old. Watching the blacksmiths hug each other and celebrate, Locke couldn't help but twitch his lips. Anyone seeing so many muscular men with bare upper bodies acting like this would feel it strange. As they prepared to leave, Locke stepped forward and said loudly, "Everyone, although the black gold bamboo sword has been successfully upgraded, your mission is not yet complete. After a brief pause, noticing every eye locked on him, he continued. You're not going to let me get away with just one, are you? I want 100 swords. 100 swords of this level. It was a decision he had carefully weighed. Compared to a regular black gold bamboo sword, the upgraded version consumed nearly double the materials. Resource consumption was massive. These weapons should be reserved for the elite of the Survey Corps. Under the standard of 2 swords per person for actual combat and 2 spares, 100 swords would be enough to equip 25 elite soldiers. It wasn't a large number, but it was sufficient. After all, only the most elite operators could unleash the sword's full potential. Locke's request dampened the excitement of the blacksmiths, who had been ready to rest. Their expressions shifted visibly, from joy to disheartenment. Knowing that asking them to work right away would be unrealistic, Locke granted them half a day off. He resolved to begin forging in full force the next morning, inspiring admiration among the team. That night, for the first time since arriving in this world, Locke allowed himself to indulge. He got drunk. He abandoned training and responsibilities. The next morning, his biological clock woke him before 6 o'clock sharp. Locke got up, washed, ate a simple breakfast, and resumed his daily training, even before Uncle Harry and the others arrived. At the same time, ELD, Gunther, Petra, and Aluo came as well. Seeing that all his teammates, except Levi, were present, Locke's expression hardened. Are they planning to cheat again? Chapter 68, Locke, come out for a moment, ELD said seriously. Behind him, Gunther stood with a worried look, her eyes full of unease. Uncle, I'll be right back, Locke said to Uncle Harry, signaling for the others to continue forging. He quickly slipped on his jacket and stepped out of the workshop. Going to sneak off again? ELD teased lightly. No, Locke replied, shaking his head. His tone was calm but curious. What's going on? Before ELD could answer, Aluo burst out angrily, the captain was forced to resign. What? Locke frowned, genuinely puzzled. In his memory, Keith Shotties had stepped down after the expedition failure, his guilt over the losses and the uncompleted base driving him to hand leadership over to Irwin. But that was supposed to come later. He couldn't understand why it was happening now. The mission had succeeded in part. They'd built a forward base in the forest of giant trees and collected valuable Titan data. That achievement far outweighed any loss. So why resign? Why else? Aluo growled. It's those pampered military police again. The brass forced him out. I can't understand what the president and ministers are thinking. They're cutting off our supply lines and abandoning Captain Hang and the others outside the walls. It's madness. His voice rose with every word, anger seething through his teeth. Gunther quickly covered her mouth and looked around, checking to be sure no one was nearby. Lower your voice. Do you want to be court-martialed? Aluo froze mid-sentence, then clenched his fists in frustration and said no more. Who's taking over now? Locke asked quietly. It's Deputy Commander Irwin Smith, Petra answered calmly. Captain Keith was supposed to accompany us, but with the Corps in chaos, he has to stay behind and help Irwin manage internal affairs. He can't leave. Locke nodded slightly. If it's Irwin, that's not so bad. Aluo stiffened again, shouting, Rookie! What's that supposed to mean? Locke sighed. It means, given our current situation, we can't afford to defy the higher-ups. All we can do is follow orders and make the best of them. Honestly, this isn't the worst outcome. The government could have placed an outsider in charge, but they didn't. That tells us something. Seeing their confusion, Locke glanced around once more to make sure they were alone. Then his tone turned sharp and cold. The situation's obvious. The royal government wants to suppress the Survey Corps' growth. The military police are just their tool. But with Irwin leading, we still have some autonomy. He paused. Captain Keith was sacrificed, but that's the best result we could hope for. It was a bitter truth. Though the Survey Corps was the smallest of the three branches, aside from the Training Corps, its expenses were enormous. Supplies, manpower, funding, everything they consumed rivaled or exceeded the military police and garrison combined. And their soldiers were elite. Every expedition refined them further, their skills and discipline unmatched. Naturally, that power made the royal government uneasy. The monarchy didn't truly want the outside world explored. Their only real priority was maintaining control. The Survey Corps existed not to seek freedom, but to gather those who still dared to dream of it and send them to die far from the walls. It was the perfect way to bury the restless hearts of humanity. Locke's expression hardened. As someone who knew what the future held, he couldn't expect anything from this corrupt system. But until the wall fell and the truth began to unravel, he had to wait. That event, the fall of Shiganshina, would change everything. Countless hidden schemes and fates would begin their march at that moment. For now, he could only prepare. When Locke finished speaking, the others stood silent, faces pale. Even ELD, who'd seen battle after battle, looked shaken. "Rookie," he muttered. "Be honest. Are you really 14? "Absolutely genuine," Locke said, smiling faintly. Then, with composure, he added, "The Corps' current state can't be changed by us. For now, we wait. We strengthen what we can, the supply lines, the outposts beyond the walls. When Commander Irwin gives the next order, we'll be ready." After a pause, he turned to ELD. "But you didn't come all this way just to tell me that, did you? There's something else." ELD nodded, expression steady. "Of course. Commander Keith asked you to stay and oversee the weapon upgrade. How's the progress?" "We came to check on your work, and to deliver the official notice about the Corps' current condition." Locke's gaze sharpened. He could tell there was something left unsaid. And he was right. What ELD didn't mention was that Irwin had already warned the smiths and officers the Corps was facing resource cuts. If the weapon project failed or dragged on, it would be abandoned entirely. Chapter 69, Inside the Training Grounds. Puff, puff, puff. With a burst of compressed air, Locke shot across the field like a flash of light. His blades gleamed, slicing through the air with precision. The reinforced wooden posts ahead, each wrapped in thick sheets of iron, split cleanly in half before crashing to the ground. Thud! Landing steadily before ELD and the others, Locke calmly handed them the twin blades. How is this possible? Not only ELD but also Petra, Gunther, and Aluo stared in disbelief. What Locke had just cut through wasn't ordinary wood, it was an iron-bound post, the metal plating nearly a centimeter thick. Any standard black iron blade would have bent, dulled, or shattered instantly. Yet these swords remained pristine. Only faint surface scratches marked their edges, so shallow they were barely visible. A damn fine pair of blades. They muttered in unison, eyes wide. ELD instinctively reached out, unable to resist testing the weight of the weapon. As elite members of the Survey Corps, they all knew just how vital a good blade could be, sometimes the difference between survival and death. Seeing ELD's eager hands, the others immediately scowled. But ELD laughed, pretending to brush it off. "Don't glare at me. Locke must have more by now. I'm just helping him lighten the load a bit." Shameless. Completely shameless. Too shameless. Aluo, Petra, and Gunther barked in perfect unison. Then, almost at the same time, they turned their hopeful gazes toward Locke. Locke only shrugged. "We've forged 6 so far. 4 were reserved for me, by the captain's orders, mind you. The remaining 2 are in ELD's hands." 4. Aluo snapped. "You're hoarding more than half for yourself." Even the usually calm Gunther frowned. "You could at least spare 1 or 2. "I agree," Petra said quietly, crossing her arms. Locke smirked inwardly but sighed aloud. "It can't be helped. My name's already engraved on those 4 blades." But, if you don't mind that, you're welcome to them. Shameless. Still shameless. Absolutely shameless. Their protests echoed across the training ground. Moments later, the group followed Locke back into the forge. The clang of hammers filled the air as flames roared inside the furnace. They squinted against the smoke, watching the blacksmiths, bare-chested and drenched in sweat, work tirelessly under the heat. Petra's cheeks flushed, whether from the haze or embarrassment, no one could tell. You all don't plan on just standing around gawking, do you? Locke teased. Taking a freshly polished blade from Uncle Harry, he examined the small inscription etched into the steel near the hilt, "Lo," carved with delicate precision. The weapon balanced perfectly in his grip. These weren't just tools. They were extensions of himself. Gunther watched, envious. I've decided. Next time, I'm engraving my name on mine too. Aluo smirked. What'll it say? Get lost? ELD and Petra burst out laughing. It's Gunther, he shouted, his face darkening. You're insufferable. Thanks for the compliment, Aluo replied, grinning smugly before turning toward the forge's glow. Their banter gradually died down, replaced by the rhythmic ring of hammer on steel and the soft hiss of cooling metal. Locke watched the others chatting with the blacksmiths about engravings and designs. Shaking his head, he muttered, Looks like you'll have to wait for the next batch to get your knife, old man. Why's that? Aluo asked, puzzled. Following Locke's gaze, he realized the truth, and cursed under his breath. You sly bastard. He quickly joined the others, arguing about which symbols to carve into their future weapons. Seeing their excitement, Locke knew he wouldn't get another word in. Gathering his 4 blades, he left them to their noisy debate. Back at the training ground, he replaced the worn-out swords on his ODM gear with the new ones. Every Survey Corps member had their own registered set of equipment, not just for combat efficiency, but for identification. In most Titan encounters, no body remained after death. Only their gear would be recovered, serving as the final proof of who had fallen. After 10 minutes of careful adjustments, Locke tightened the last clasp, refilled the gas cylinders, and set the gear on the table. He leaned back, exhaling deeply. His thoughts began to wander. What excuse can I use to stay in Shiganshina district a little longer? By now, Irwin Smith, officially in command, would be making his first strategic moves. The government's refusal to resupply the forward base had been nothing more than a warning shot, testing his resolve. But Locke knew Irwin well enough. The man wouldn't yield to political pressure. A new expedition order was only a matter of time. And when it came, so would the fall of Shiganshina. For all the seeming peace, unease simmered beneath Locke's calm exterior. That quiet was shattered without warning. Locke! We came to see you. Aaron's voice echoed across the grounds, loud and bright. Locke pinched the bridge of his nose. Does this kid think this is a playground? Sure enough, Aaron, Armin, and Mikasa came running, waving like children who'd just escaped class. Normally, cadets weren't allowed anywhere near the Survey Corps' base. But since Locke had become their unofficial mentor, no one bothered to stop them anymore. He rose to meet them, half smiling in amusement, until his gaze flicked toward the wall. And froze. A colossal, steaming face towered above the ramparts. The air shimmered from the heat radiating off its skin. Locke's heart seized. Why is it appearing now? Chapter 70, Why did it appear now? Locke's mind raced. He had expected more time, enough to move the people he cared about to safety. But reality crushed that hope in an instant, leaving him momentarily frozen. Aaron and the others finally noticed the massive, steaming head rising above the wall. Their faces drained of color. That's a Titan? No way, impossible, no. It's possible. Fear surged through Armin, seizing his chest and freezing his breath. Standing beside him, Mikasa whispered in disbelief, the tallest Titan we know is only 15 meters. So how can that one see over the wall? It's moving! Aaron shouted, voice cracking with panic. Locke forced his thoughts to clear. There was no time to question anything. Boom! A thunderous explosion shook the earth as debris from the wall blasted outward, enormous chunks of stone raining down like meteors. The shockwave tore through the air, shaking the very foundations of Shiganshina. Locke instantly understood this was the power of an intelligent titan. His heart pounded, but his resolve held. He lunged forward, kicking Aaron aside and grabbing Mikasa and Armin under each arm. With one explosive leap, he hurled them more than 10 meters away. Boom! The ground where they'd stood shattered as a massive stone crushed it flat. The wall's been breached. Locke shouted, his voice sharp as steel. Pure Titans will pour into Shiganshina soon, and Reiner will breach Wall Maria before long. There's no time to hesitate, we have to evacuate Uncle Harry and the others immediately. Urgency burned through his veins. Stay here and don't move, Locke barked. He threw on his ODM gear, engaged the gas canisters, and shot toward the direction of Aaron's home. Behind him, Petra and the others burst from the workshop, alarmed by the explosions. Their faces went pale as they stared at the sight of a Titan towering over the wall. A Titan over 50 meters tall. Petra gasped. The wall's breached. Locke shouted as he landed beside them. It's an emergency. Everyone, gear up, now. Some of them stood frozen, stunned by the chaos. Locke clenched his jaw. What are you waiting for? Prepare for battle. Since the day he'd awakened in this world, Locke had never lost control like this. But panic was useless. There was only action. Petra's body jolted. Cold fear surged up her spine, but she forced herself to move, rushing to the armory to strap on her gear. Uncle Harry! Locke turned sharply. Take Aunt Martha inside and lock the doors. Your area is still safe for now. Harry's family lived farther from the breach, safe for the moment. But Aaron's home was less than 1,000 meters from the impact zone, right in the heart of the disaster. Locke turned to warn Aaron and the others. But they were gone. Damn it! Without thinking, Locke fired his hooks and soared into the air, racing across rooftops toward Aaron's neighborhood. Behind him, Uncle Harry and the others finally broke free from their shock. Faces pale and trembling, they ran toward their homes, praying their loved ones were safe. Why? Why did the wall fall? How could it happen? The century-old illusion of safety was shattered. Screams filled the streets, panic, curses, the cries of the dying. The first wave of pure Titans poured through the gaping hole in the wall, moving with terrifying hunger. Locke ignored it all. His world had narrowed to one goal, to protect his family. Damn it! If Aunt Carla's in danger, I'll tear you apart myself. His words were half snarl, half vow. Swoosh! A 10-meter Titan lunged from an alley, its mouth wide. Locke met it head-on, firing his cables into a nearby roof, flipping forward midair, and severing its nape with a clean strike. Civilians below stared up in awe and terror, watching as the Titan collapsed. To them, Locke might as well have been some vengeful god. Almost there, just a little farther. Meanwhile, the garrison regiment finally responded, scrambling to evacuate civilians and slow the Titan's advance. But it was chaos. Years of peace had dulled their edge. Most had never faced Titans before. Some froze, others fled, and too many were devoured before even drawing their blades. The streets near the inner gate of Wall Maria became a sea of panic and blood. In moments like these, humanity's weakness was laid bare. Still, amid the collapse, one area stood firm, the section defended by Petra, Aluo, ELD, and Gunther. The Survey Corps elites had joined the fight. But even they were overwhelmed. There are too many! Aluo shouted, eyes fixed on the approaching horde. We can't stop them all. Petra's hands trembled on her blades. ELD and Gunther exchanged grim looks. Without needing to speak, they all reached the same conclusion. They couldn't save the district. They turned their ODM gear toward the inner gate. Their only choice was to regroup and survive. As they retreated, Petra's thoughts lingered on one person, Locke. The fall of Shiganshina isn't a possibility anymore. It's inevitable. Rookie, don't be too reckless. Chapter 71, the entire area before him lay in ruins. Streets were torn apart, houses reduced to rubble, and shattered stones filled the air with dust and silence. But there wasn't a single Titan in sight, nor any trace of Aunt Carla. That, at least, loosened the tight knot in Locke's chest. Still, the distant roar of Titans echoed faintly through the streets, a grim reminder that this momentary calm wouldn't last. Soon, this place would become a gathering point, a slaughterhouse. Aunt Carla should be fine, Locke murmured, scanning the wreckage. Then, at the next intersection, he spotted Aaron and Mikasa rushing forward, faces pale with fear. Armin was nowhere to be seen. Most likely, he had gone home or fled. At this age, Armin hadn't yet become the brave strategist he would one day be, just a timid boy frozen by terror. How brave, Locke muttered dryly, tightening his grip on his blades. Before he could move, a Titan, 3 or 4 meters tall, lurched out from behind a collapsed wall near the two children. It moved fast, faster than either of them could react. Everything's different now, Locke whispered, his expression hardening. He drew both blades, triggered his maneuver gear, and shot forward with a burst of compressed gas. It's a Titan! Run! We're almost home, Aaron shouted. Don't talk, just keep running, Mikasa snapped, her calm cutting through Aaron's panic. But neither of them could outrun it. The Titan's massive steps shook the street, closing the gap in seconds. They turned in terror as its huge face loomed over them, lifeless eyes fixed on its prey. Is this the end? Aaron thought numbly. Mama. Papa. Mikasa's mind went blank. Then, whoosh! A flash of light cut through the air. From a nearby rooftop, a figure descended with blinding speed. Snick! A clean strike severed the Titan's nape. Steam hissed violently as the creature stumbled forward, its body collapsing and rolling to a stop right beside the children. Thud! Aaron swallowed hard. Mikasa's wide eyes slowly turned toward the rescuer. Locke! She whispered. Locke, what are you doing here? Aaron asked, stunned. Locke landed lightly in front of them, his expression unreadable. Without warning, he smacked Aaron on the head. I told you to stay put. Why are you running around on your own? Do you have any idea how dangerous this place is? He scolded. I came to look for, Aaron began. I already checked your house, Locke cut him off. Aunt Carla and Uncle Grisha aren't there. They must have escaped already. He pointed toward the interior wall. Go! Head for Wall Maria. Now. Yes, sir, Aaron said quickly. Knowing his family was safe, he didn't argue further. He grabbed Mikasa's hand, and together they sprinted toward the inner gate. Watching them go, Locke sighed. I've basically become a babysitter, he muttered. Still, he turned toward their home once more, double-checking the area. When he found no trace of Aunt Carla, he shifted direction, toward Armin's neighborhood. But before he could reach it, a familiar voice rang out. Locke, run! Hannes stumbled from a side alley, panic etched across his face. Behind him thundered a Titan, a woman with a hauntingly familiar visage. Locke froze for only a heartbeat. It was her. The Titan that had once been Dina Fritz, Grisha's first wife, and the former royal blood of Marley. Locke's eyes narrowed. Whatever she had been before didn't matter anymore. Now, she was just another mindless Titan. Get back, Hannes, Locke said calmly. Without waiting for a reply, he propelled himself forward, streaking low along the street toward the Titan. Gas hissed. Blades flashed. In one swift motion, he slashed across both her wrists, severing her hands cleanly. The Titan roared in agony, staggering. Locke spun once more, cutting through both ankles in a blur of steel and smoke. Sniff! The giant crashed to the ground, helpless and twitching, steam rising from its wounds. Locke stood a few meters ahead, expression cold. "Keep living," he said quietly. "If all goes well, I'll restore you next time we meet." He turned away, approaching Hannes, who stood frozen in disbelief. You. Hannes stammered, staring at the fallen Titan. He could barely process what he'd just seen, a monster that had once seemed unstoppable, now rendered powerless within seconds. Locke ignored his shock. His eyes drifted to the maneuver gear on Hannes's waist. "Uncle, I need your gas tank." "What?" "Oh, sure," Hannes mumbled, still dazed. Locke swiftly detached the spare tank and replaced his own depleted one, exhaling in relief. He'd burned through nearly all his gas during the chaos, barely a third remained. This would keep him fighting a little longer. He glanced toward Uncle Harry's house in the distance. "Let's go. We head for Wall Maria's entrance, it's going to be hell down there." Before Hannes could respond, Locke launched himself skyward, cables hissing as he darted across the rooftops toward the smoke and fire. The sky burned orange. The screams of Shiganshina echoed behind him. Locke didn't look back. Chapter 72, running at full speed, Locke reached the roof of Harry's blacksmith shop. He found that Uncle Harry and Aunt Martha had already left. A small sigh of relief escaped him. But that relief was short-lived. The pounding of heavy footsteps echoed through the streets. Titans were closing in from all sides. Because the survivors had fled in haste, most stragglers had already been devoured. That left Locke, the only human still in sight, and every Titan nearby instantly locked onto him. One by one, they began to converge. "Since Uncle and the others aren't here," Locke muttered dryly, licking his parched lips, "it's time for me to leave." Suppressing his rising urge to cut down every Titan in sight, he turned and leapt toward the direction of Wall Maria's gate. His mind spun with calculations. If I remember correctly, the breach happened earlier than in the original timeline, which means much of what I know might already be useless. His thoughts drifted to Grisha Jaeger. By his recollection, Grisha should have already gone inland to practice medicine, far from Shiganshina, before the fall. That was when he stole the power of the founding Titan. But what if, in this altered timeline, Grisha never left? Locke clenched his jaw. If that's the case, I might still have room to act before everything falls apart. His train of thought broke when a massive shadow blocked the street ahead. Standing in the center of the main road was a towering, 15-meter Titan, its entire body sheathed in hardened plates of armor. The armored Titan. Reiner Braun. So it's happening already. Locke stopped at the edge of a rooftop, eyes fixed on Reiner, who was gathering momentum for a full-speed charge toward Wall Maria. Should I intervene? If he killed Reiner here, countless tragedies could be prevented. The breach, the retreat, the years of suffering, all of it. But one wrong move meant death. And even if he succeeded, what then? He couldn't inherit a Titan's power at will. It required a deliberate choice and a price, 13 years of life. Even if forced to take one, the armored Titan wasn't the power he wanted. No. There was no reason to act. Not yet. Reiner roared, breaking into a sprint. The ground shook beneath his charge as he slammed straight into Wall Maria's gate. The thunderous impact shattered stone and iron alike. Locke watched the dust and smoke rise into the air, a faint tremor passing through his chest. With that one strike, Shiganshina and Wall Maria had fallen. Sighing softly, he whispered to himself, from beginning to end, "I've always been selfish." He let the words fade and turned toward the gate. The collapse was a tragedy, but also an opportunity. The Survey Corps had long been ridiculed, their status diminished. But this disaster would shift everything. When humanity needed heroes, the ones who ventured outside the walls would become indispensable. And if Locke wanted to change the order of this world, he needed more than rank or recognition. He needed power, Titan power. Reiner, Bertholdt, and Annie, all Marleyan warriors. For now, he couldn't confront them head-on. But in time, he would claim the three powers that mattered most, the attack Titan, the founding Titan, and the Jaw Titan. Those would be his weapons to rewrite fate itself. Lost in thought, Locke reached the entrance of Wall Maria. What greeted him was chaos, soldiers and civilians scattering in panic, smoke filling the air. The city gate lay in ruins, crushed by Reiner's charge. Amid the crowd, Petra, ELD, Aluo, and Gunther stood out, their composure marking them as Survey Corps veterans. Even so, the sight of the armored Titan had shaken them. They had faced countless Titans beyond the walls, but never one so unyielding, a creature that shrugged off artillery and shattered a gate in one blow. Thankfully, after breaching the gate, the armored Titan had vanished, a small miracle amid disaster. Spotting Locke approaching, Petra rushed over, relief and anger warring on her face. "Why are you only showing up now?" she snapped, though the worry in her eyes betrayed her. ELD, Aluo, and Gunther wore similar expressions. Locke didn't answer. There was no time. The rumbling footsteps of Titans echoed closer by the second. "This place can't be held," Locke said firmly. "Delay them as much as possible so the civilians can escape by water." ELD nodded grimly. "That's the only option." A heavy silence settled over the group. They didn't lack courage, but the odds were impossible. Dozens of Titans against 5 soldiers. The garrison troops were in shambles, their discipline long eroded by years of peace. Many stood frozen in terror, others fled. Their once practiced maneuvering was sloppy, desperate. Locke drew his blades, watching as the first Titans breached the plaza. The fall of Wall Maria had begun. Humanity's outermost fortress was lost. Chapter 73, Inside a Residential Building. "Locke, if not for you this time, Eren and Mikasa might have." Carla's voice trembled, unable to finish. The image of what could have happened left her breathless, eyes brimming with tears. Eren and Mikasa stood beside her, anxious and unsure how to comfort her. "Aunt Carla, please don't say that," Locke replied gently. "I've always thought of Eren and Mikasa as family. There's no way I'd ever let them get hurt." He placed a reassuring hand on their heads, then shifted the topic. "By the way, when did you leave your house?" "I went there earlier, but you were gone." Carla wiped her eyes, recalling the moment. "We were just about to send your Uncle Grisha inland to practice medicine when the wall broke. It happened so suddenly, stones came crashing down from the sky. If we'd left a few steps later, we wouldn't have made it out." Her words carried lingering fear. As a simple homemaker, she had no grand dreams, just a quiet, complete family and a peaceful life. But the breach had shattered everything she held dear. Fortunately, Grisha and Eren were still safe. Otherwise, she wasn't sure she could go on living. Sitting beside her, Martha squeezed Carla's trembling hand. "Don't think about what's lost," she said softly. "As long as we're together, we can start over." Carla nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, start over." Watching the two women, Eren's expression darkened. His small fists clenched, his jaw tight. He hated the Titans. If it weren't for them, his mother wouldn't be crying. If it weren't for them, people wouldn't be suffering and running for their lives. Because of them, countless families were gone. Titans shouldn't exist in this world. Locke noticed the shift in Eren's eyes and sighed inwardly. "You haven't yet seen your mother die before your eyes," he thought, "but that hatred. It's already there." His gaze slid toward Grisha, who had been silent the entire time. According to Carla, Grisha had not gone inland yet, meaning he hadn't taken the founding Titan's power. That revelation startled Locke, though it was good news for his plan. Now wasn't the time to seize the founding Titan. Neither Grisha nor Eren could properly wield their power yet. Both carried royal blood in a diluted form but lacked the means to activate the coordinate. Still, Locke couldn't afford to wait for the story to play out naturally. The fall of the wall had shattered the old order. Peace was dead. It was time to move, to claim real influence, starting with the ruling Rice family. But only temporarily. The Rice family, shackled by the vow of renunciation of war, lacked any ambition to defend or rebuild humanity. They clung to King Karl Fritz's pacifism, content to let millions of Eldians live and die quietly within the walls. What they didn't know was that the world outside had already changed. Marley's Industrial Revolution was underway. Steamships, guns, and cannons had rendered the Titans' power less absolute. And with Paradis Island's vast natural resources sitting untouched, it was only a matter of time before the outside world turned its attention back here. If Paradis didn't adapt, it would be crushed. That was the truth Locke understood better than anyone. The Rice family was supposed to be humanity's leaders, yet they hid behind the walls, indulging in complacency and self-deception. Frida Rice, the current holder of the founding Titan, could have changed everything. She had the power, the authority, the position. But she remained silent. Their so-called atonement was nothing more than cowardice wrapped in righteousness. Escape solves nothing. To Locke, their purpose was simple: to be used. To give him power and influence. After that, he would not need them. As a man out of time, he saw the world differently, like a chessboard in motion, every piece an opportunity. The outer gate of Wall Maria was already gone. The Marleyan warrior unit had infiltrated successfully. Soon, the next phase of their plan would unfold. Time was running short. Locke glanced briefly at Grisha, keeping his expression neutral. If Grisha acted now and seized the founding Titan's power, Locke's options would vanish. He couldn't let that happen. He needed to leave, quickly, before things spiraled out of control. Because he knew, once Grisha made his move, there would be no turning back. Chapter 74. In the end, Locke did not confront Grisha immediately. The timing simply wasn't right. For now, the Survey Corps couldn't act. At that moment, inside the Survey Corps headquarters, in Commander Irwin Smith's office, the air felt unusually still. "Are you asking for leave again?" Irwin asked, his calm eyes sharpening with curiosity. "I'd like to know the reason." "I have something I must do," Locke said, standing straight before him. His gaze didn't waver. "It's important." Irwin studied him in silence for a moment, then nodded once. "I see. In that case, go do what you must. Report to me the moment you return." Locke bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Commander." As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of Captain Levi, who had remained silent the entire time, arms folded and expression unreadable. Locke met his eyes for a brief moment, then walked out, closing the office door behind him. When the sound of footsteps faded, Levi finally spoke. "You agreed too easily," he said flatly. "Why? Why not?" Irwin replied calmly. Levi frowned. "He's hiding something." Irwin didn't deny it. Instead, he walked to the window, hands behind his back. "What did you think of what he proposed earlier?" Levi paused, remembering Locke's earlier report. "A wise Titan, huh? That's a bold idea." "Indeed," Irwin said quietly. "For years, we believed Titans were mindless, driven only by instinct to devour humans. But the colossal and armored Titan's recent appearance proved otherwise." His tone deepened. "They appeared, attacked strategically, and then vanished. It's a serious contradiction to everything we thought we knew." Levi's eyes narrowed. "You think they can think?" Irwin turned from the window. "Why not? It's time we questioned our own assumptions." Levi exhaled sharply. "Makes sense, but what about the other point?" Irwin looked at him. Levi hesitated, recalling Locke's second theory. Even for him, it was almost too much to believe. "You mean," Levi said slowly, "that Titans could be transformed humans?" For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Irwin's expression hardened, the faintest spark of dread crossing his otherwise composed face. "It's an outrageous thought. And yet, everything fits too perfectly." Levi clenched his jaw. Eyewitnesses said both the colossal and armored Titans disappeared without a trace. They didn't fly away. They didn't dig underground. There's only one explanation left. He met Irwin's gaze. They're human. Irwin nodded slightly. It's a terrifying possibility, but a logical one. If that's true, Levi said darkly, then those bastards are already inside the walls. Irwin's eyes glinted with that familiar fire, equal parts curiosity and conviction. Infiltrated, perhaps there are scenes beyond these walls we can't yet imagine. Levi scoffed, though a flicker of unease passed through him. Some scenes aren't worth seeing. Outside, Locke walked across the courtyard, unaware, or perhaps perfectly aware, of the storm his words had stirred. In his mind, a faint notification chimed, a reminder from the strange system that had guided him since awakening in this world. He dismissed it quickly, expression unreadable. They bought it, he thought, suppressing a smirk. And why shouldn't they? Everything I said was true. Those two theories he had presented weren't speculation, they were facts. But feeding them to Irwin at the right time was a move carefully calculated. He knew Irwin's mind well enough to predict his reaction, rational skepticism followed by deep curiosity. If the Survey Corps could prepare earlier, if they could avoid the mistakes that would cost countless lives, then his plans would progress more smoothly. That was all that mattered. Locke adjusted his maneuver gear and made his way back toward the residential block where Aaron and the others had taken refuge. It was a modest two-story house, once Locke's own, but now shared by several families displaced after Wal Maria's fall, Aaron and his parents, Uncle Harry's family, and Locke himself. The moment he opened the door, a heated argument filled the air. "I said no, Aaron." Carla's voice trembled with both fear and anger. "You're not joining the Survey Corps." Aaron's voice shot back, high with frustration. "But I have to. If we don't fight, we'll live like cattle forever." Locke paused in the doorway, leaning against the frame, an amused smile tugging at his lips. "Same argument every day," he muttered. He slipped past them quietly and climbed the stairs to his room. His quarters faced the one Grisha and Carla shared. From there, he could observe Grisha's movements whenever needed, something he had been doing for days now. Grisha Yeager, doctor of high repute within the walls, was a man both admired and quietly resented. His medical skill and knowledge gave him influence far beyond that of an ordinary citizen. Even now, after the fall of Wal Maria, when refugees flooded into Walrose territory, his services were in constant demand. Illness, injury, and fear hadn't lessened, they'd multiplied. But Locke could tell something was off. Grisha's behavior had changed. He was distracted, restless, often lost in thought. Locke didn't need to guess why. If Aaron were 10 years old now, then the time was drawing near, the time when Grisha would act, when he would seek out the founding Titan from the Rice family and pass the attack Titan to his son. Locke folded his arms and stared out the window, thinking. He couldn't allow that to happen. Not yet. If Grisha obtained the founding Titan now, events would spiral uncontrollably. Locke needed time to position himself, to learn where the Rice family hid, and to decide how best to take advantage of what was coming. Besides, the Rice family. They disgusted him. The true royal bloodline within the walls, heirs to Karl Fritz's twisted ideal of peace through ignorance. Bound by the vow of renunciation of war, they willingly condemned millions of Eldians to die quietly, generation after generation, believing it was atonement. Frida Rice, the current founding Titan, could have changed everything. She had the power, the authority, and the knowledge. But instead, she clung to the same hall of faith. Locke scoffed quietly to himself. Sacrifice isn't nobility when it's forced, he thought. It's cowardice disguised as mercy. The Rice family had become the very rot that paralyzed humanity within the walls. They didn't need salvation, they needed replacement. And Locke intended to provide it. He wasn't some naive soldier chasing dreams of freedom. He saw further than that. He understood the inevitability of conflict beyond the sea. The nations outside already had weapons that could crush Titans. Their technology was advancing faster than anyone here could imagine. When the ships came, and they would come, no wall would save them. Humanity couldn't hide forever behind stone and lies. That was why he needed power. Real power. The Founding Titan, the Attack Titan, and perhaps even the Jaw Titan, each piece would bring him closer to what he needed, the strength to reshape this world before it collapsed. He just needed patience. And information. Grisha was the key to both. For now, Locke decided to remain quiet, to watch, and to wait for the perfect moment. Confrontation would come soon enough. He leaned back against the chair, eyes drifting toward the ceiling as faint voices echoed downstairs, Carla's worried tone, Aaron's muffled frustration, Mikasa's silence as she tried to calm them both. A small, genuine smile tugged at his lips. Despite everything, they were still just a family. And for now, that was worth protecting. But time was moving forward, and the world wouldn't wait for anyone, not even them. The next morning, after a quiet breakfast, Grisha slipped out as usual, claiming to visit patients on the east side of town. Locke's eyes followed him through the window until he disappeared around the corner. He knew where Grisha was really going. Finally, Locke murmured, standing and reaching for his blades. "It's time to see where your faith leads you, Doctor." With a quick adjustment of his maneuver gear, he stepped out onto the roof, sunlight glinting off his blades as he took to the air. A silent shadow trailing after the man who held the key to humanity's future. Chapter 75. Locke moved through the narrow streets of Trost, his pace steady, his eyes locked on a single figure in the distance. Grisha Jaeger. He kept a measured distance, close enough not to lose him, far enough to avoid suspicion. Around 70 meters. That was the sweet spot. Grisha's gait was faster than usual, tense and deliberate. He looked back from time to time, scanning every corner, every shadow. The caution in his movements only confirmed Locke's suspicion. He was about to act. Locke's expression remained unreadable, but inside, thoughts churned like a storm. So it's finally time, huh? The streets thinned out as they moved further from the district center. Cobblestone gave way to packed dirt, and scattered houses to wide patches of farmland. A cold breeze drifted through the trees, carrying the faint scent of soil and smoke. Grisha's figure pressed on, unwavering. You must be torn apart right now, Locke thought, his eyes narrowing. On one side, your family, Carla, Aaron, the life you built inside these walls. On the other hand, the promise you made to the restorationists. To your fallen comrades. The dream of Eldia's freedom. He sighed quietly. If he were in Grisha's place, what would he choose? Probably the same. It wasn't about ambition or obsession. It was inevitable. The moment Grisha inherited the Attack Titan, his future had already been written in someone else's memories. The Attack Titan, unlike the Armored or the Colossal, had no shell, no fire, no overwhelming mass. What it held instead was will. The unyielding drive to defy fate. The embodiment of freedom. It was said that every inheritor could peer through the paths of memory into the lives of those who came before and even glimpse those yet to come. Perhaps that was why Grisha seemed so desperate. So afraid. So resolved. He had already seen what must happen. And he had no choice but to walk this path. Locke's steps slowed slightly as his gaze followed the man's back. I wonder, will I appear in that future you saw, Grisha? Will you see me standing beside you, or against you? After nearly an hour, the trees thinned, revealing a small, abandoned chapel at the end of a dirt road. Its walls were cracked, ivy creeping along its stonework. The wooden doors hung slightly open, swaying in the wind. Locke's pulse quickened. So this is it, the Rice family's chapel. He crouched low among the bushes, his eyes following Grisha as the man approached the entrance. Grisha hesitated for a moment, glancing around. Then he slipped inside. No guards, Locke thought. Either they're confident no one knows, or they've grown far too complacent. He clenched his jaw. Over a century of false peace had turned the rulers of the walls into fragile custodians, blind to everything but their own illusion of order. The Rice family, with all their divine pretense, had long abandoned the spirit of humanity's survival. They hid behind a vow of pacifism, convincing themselves it was mercy. But to Locke, it was cowardice dressed as virtue. If they truly cared for peace, they could have done so without chains. If they truly sought salvation, they wouldn't have erased their own memories. Pathetic, he thought. But still useful. He edged closer, silent as a shadow, until the chapel's cracked doorway was just a few feet ahead. Peering through a narrow gap, he saw Grisha move toward the altar, crouch, and lift a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a staircase descending into darkness. A hidden passage. Locke's pulse steadied. There it is. He exhaled slowly and stepped into the doorway, his voice calm but firm. "Uncle, are you sure you want to go in?" The echo of his words cut through the silence like a blade. Grisha froze. His eyes widened as he spun around, disbelief washing over his face. Locke? What are you doing here?" Locke tilted his head slightly, expression calm. "Following you, of course. You've been acting strange lately." He pointed toward the dark passage below the altar. "This leads to the founding titan, doesn't it? To the true rulers of the walls." Grisha's mouth fell open. How do you know that?" Panic flickered behind his glasses. His mind reeled. This wasn't part of the future he remembered. Locke wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to exist in this moment. Grisha began, but before he could finish, Locke closed the distance and struck sharply at the side of his neck. Grisha's body went limp. Locke caught him before he hit the floor inside. "Sorry," he murmured. "This isn't the right place for a conversation." He shut the floor panel gently, ensuring no trace of disturbance remained. Then he carried Grisha out of the chapel and vanished into the forest shadows. The trees thickened as he went deeper, until he reached a small clearing hidden from sight. Lying Grisha down against a moss-covered trunk, Locke sat a few feet away and waited. His mind raced with possibilities. He had no intention of killing Grisha, far from it. The man was crucial to the flow of history. But perhaps history didn't need to unfold exactly as before. Maybe there was still a path where Aaron didn't have to bear that same cursed burden. 10 long minutes passed before Grisha stirred. His eyes fluttered open, confusion mixing with fear. "Locke? You're awake." Locke leaned forward slightly. "Don't move too much. I just needed your attention." Grisha tried to sit up, but Locke's calm gaze froze him in place. "What do you want from me?" "To talk." Grisha frowned. "About what?" "The truth," Locke replied. "About what you're planning to do, and what comes after." Grisha's breath hitched. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." The silence between them thickened. Wind rustled through the leaves overhead. Finally, Grisha spoke, voice low and shaking. "The Rice family holds the founding titan's power. It's been passed down through generations. They've kept humanity within these walls for over a century under a vow of peace." He paused, gripping his knees tightly. "But peace built on ignorance isn't peace. My people, our people, were driven into these cages and made to forget who they are. I can't stand by and watch that continue." Locke nodded slowly. "So you intend to steal the founding titan?" "Yes. You know what that means, right? Once you do it, you'll destroy everything you've built here. Carla, Aaron, they'll lose you." Grisha's eyes trembled. "I know." "Then why still go?" "Because someone has to," Grisha said softly, almost pleadingly. "If I don't, no one will. The future depends on it." Locke's gaze softened for the first time. "You've seen it, haven't you?" "The future." Grisha froze. "What did you say?" "The attack titan's power," Locke continued. "It lets you see memories across time. You've already seen the moment you'll face the Rice family. The moment you'll hand everything to Aaron." Grisha's lips trembled. How do you know all this?" Locke's expression darkened, though his tone stayed even. "Let's just say I've seen pieces of that same path. And I don't intend to let history repeat itself blindly." He stood, glancing toward the chapel barely visible through the trees. "If you go there now, you'll slaughter them all, except Rod Rice. And afterward, you'll give your power to your son. Aaron will inherit not just the Titan, but your grief, your guilt, your endless war." Grisha's hands trembled as he stared up at him. "Then what should I do?" Locke's eyes hardened. "That's what I'm here to find out." The two stood in silence, one man carrying the burden of destiny, the other standing at the edge of defying it. Somewhere far beyond the forest, the faint bell of the chapel tolled, its echo fading into the wind, like a warning of the storm yet to come. Locke glanced back toward the path. "Time's running out." He knelt beside Grisha once more. "Uncle, whatever happens next, remember this. The world outside these walls isn't gone. And neither is the truth." Grisha met his eyes, uncertainty and hope flickering in the same glance. Locke stood, the faintest glimmer of resolve crossing his features. "The future doesn't have to be written in blood," he said quietly. "Not this time." The forest wind swept through, carrying away his words like a whisper, one that might never reach anyone, yet still changed everything that followed. Chapter 76. The faint breeze rustled through the forest canopy, carrying the smell of earth and moss. Grisha stirred, eyes flickering open. His vision steadied, and the sight before him made his breath hitch. Locke stood under a tree, calm and silent, eyes fixed on him. Startled, Grisha jolted upright. Sweat rolled down his back. He stumbled a few steps backward, his hand darting to the knife at his belt. In one smooth motion, he drew it and pressed the blade against his palm. His gaze hardened. "Are you really, Locke?" Locke's expression softened, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. "Uncle, you don't even recognize me?" Grisha's brows furrowed so tightly they nearly met. "Then how?" Locke stepped forward a little, voice steady. "You're wondering how I know, aren't you? About your secret, about what you plan to do." He paused for effect, then added casually, "I accidentally entered your basement. And found something interesting." Grisha's eyes widened. "You, what? You went into the basement?" The shock in his tone wasn't just from discovery, it was fear. The basement was the heart of his hidden truth, the symbol of everything he carried from the outside world. For a long moment, the forest fell silent except for the sound of leaves rustling overhead. Then, slowly, Grisha exhaled and sheathed his knife. Locke watched closely. His gamble had worked. Grisha Yeager was a man ruled by conviction, not by greed. He wouldn't kill to protect himself, not if he believed his ideals could still live on. He was the kind of man who would walk alone into the Rice Chapel to beg the founding Titan's holder for mercy, even knowing rejection awaited him. Even knowing that the outcome was already written. If Frieda Rice had agreed to help him, the entire future might have been different. But Locke knew that was impossible. The chain of fate had already been forged. Back in the present, Grisha straightened, studying Locke with suspicion. "If you truly know who I am, why haven't you reported me to the royal government? You'd be rewarded beyond measure." What he really wanted to ask, what burned inside him, was something else entirely. Why hadn't I seen you in my memories of the future? But he didn't ask. Even if he did, Locke wouldn't answer. Perhaps even he didn't know why. "Uncle," Locke said evenly, "just because I wear the uniform of the Survey Corps doesn't mean I serve the royal government." Grisha's frown deepened. "But I didn't see you." Locke smiled faintly. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that our goals are the same." Grisha's voice lowered, wary. "And what goal would that be?" "Freedom," Locke said simply. His tone was firm, unyielding. "First, freedom for the Eldians on Parody Island. Then for those beyond the sea, our people who live as slaves under Marley's rule." Grisha blinked, startled by the intensity in his words. He stared hard into Locke's eyes, searching for deceit, for weakness, anything. Instead, he found conviction. A conviction so unwavering it frightened him. "Do you truly believe that?" Grisha asked quietly. Locke didn't flinch. I do. For the first time in years, Grisha felt the faintest glimmer of hope. The burden he carried since inheriting the Attack Titan, the weight of restoring Eldia, of rewriting the future, had crushed him into silence. No one had ever understood. No one had shared it. Until now. Locke's gaze was steady. He didn't look away. His words had no hesitation born of inexperience. He spoke like a man who had already walked through countless failures and carried the scars to prove it. Yet Grisha's mind remained torn. Logic screamed caution, but his heart yearned to believe. Trust him, one voice whispered. Share the truth. Kill him, another urged. End the risk before it grows. The two impulses clashed, leaving him paralyzed. Locke broke the silence. I don't expect you to trust me right away. But I'll ask you one thing, don't take the Founding Titan's power. Not yet. Grisha's eyes narrowed. Why? Because the Rice family still has its uses, Locke replied, his tone calm, deliberate. I can use them to climb higher, gain power and influence within the walls. What are you saying? Grisha's voice trembled. A shocking thought crossed his mind. Locke, you intend to? Locke's expression didn't change. That's right. I intend to rise high enough to challenge the order itself. To gain strength that cannot be ignored. He took a step closer, his shadow falling across Grisha. I'll use that power to crush the royal government from within, to turn parity into something more than a cage. When that happens, we'll have the strength to liberate every Eldian enslaved by Marley. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Grisha stood frozen. He had seen this kind of fervor before, long ago, among the Eldian restorationists who had once fought beside him in Marley. The same eyes. The same conviction. But he had also seen those flames extinguished, one by one. By betrayal. By failure. By death. His son Zeke had destroyed them all. Grisha's heart ached with the memory. You speak of impossible things, he whispered. The royal family has ruled for over a century. They are not easily toppled. Even with power, the people will not rise. Locke tilted his head slightly, a faint smile returning. In the face of absolute power, obstacles mean nothing. Once we control the Founding Titan, the tens of thousands of Titans outside the walls will answer to us. Grisha's breath caught. If that's true, then yes, the balance could shift. But I can't use that power. Not without royal blood. Locke's gaze sharpened. Royal blood. If I recall correctly, your first wife, Dina, was a descendant of the Fritz family, wasn't she? Grisha's eyes dimmed. He nodded, voice heavy with grief. Yes. Dina was of royal blood. But she's gone. Turned into a pure Titan by Marley, and I don't know where she is. Locke remained silent for a moment, then spoke with deliberate calm. Uncle, what if I told you I saw a pure Titan that looked like her? In Shiganshina district. Grisha froze. What did you say? Locke's voice was soft, almost sympathetic. I can't be certain. But I saw her before the breach. A Titan unlike the others, its eyes seemed to remember something. You felt it, didn't you? The moment you looked at her? Grisha's face went pale. His breathing quickened as old memories surged back. Dina's face. Her promise. No matter what form I take, I will find you. He had tried to bury those words. Now they clawed back to the surface. Locke, if that's true. His voice trembled. Then Dina's Titan, she might still be out there. Locke nodded. Exactly. And if that's the case, then the key to everything, the link to the royal bloodline, still exists. We can still awaken the Founding Titan's true power. Grisha staggered back a step, the enormity of it crashing over him. But how? Even if I found her, she's a mindless Titan. Locke's tone was quiet but firm. Then we change that. One step at a time. The conviction in his voice silenced the forest around them. For the first time, Grisha didn't see a boy in front of him, he saw a leader. Someone shaped by time, sharpened by purpose. "Uncle," Locke said softly, "the world outside these walls has already begun to move. Marley's ships will come sooner or later. The people inside the walls still live in ignorance, believing these stones can protect them forever. They need someone to lead them when everything collapses. And that someone can't be a ghost from the past." Grisha met his gaze, breathing unevenly. "And you think it can be you?" Locke smiled faintly. "No. It will be me." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy, filled with unspoken trust and fear. Finally, Grisha sheathed his knife again. "Then what do you plan to do now?" Locke's eyes turned toward the horizon, where the faint outline of Walrose glimmered through the trees. "For now, I'll return. Prepare. Observe. Every step must be precise. When the time comes, I'll act. And when I do, you'll understand everything." Grisha hesitated. Then, for the first time, he bowed his head slightly. "If what you say is true, then perhaps, just perhaps, there's still hope left for our people." Locke turned away, his voice drifting through the forest. "Hope isn't something we wait for, Uncle. It's something we take." The wind stirred the leaves again as he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Grisha standing alone among the trees, his heart torn between disbelief and the fragile spark of faith he thought he'd long lost. Chapter 77. "What?" Grisha stepped forward without hesitation, gripping Locke's shoulders tightly. His voice trembled with disbelief and desperate hope. "Are you sure that was Dina?" Locke didn't flinch. He had expected that reaction. No wonder Grisha's composure cracked so easily. If there was anyone he had truly failed, someone he carried guilt for even in his sleep, it was his first wife, Dina Fritz. She hadn't just been his partner in the Eldian restoration movement, she had been the one who believed in him when no one else did. And now, to hear that she might still be alive, even as a mindless titan, it was enough to shake the foundations of everything he thought he'd lost. Locke spoke evenly, his tone calm to balance Grisha's shaking voice. "I've seen the photo of you and her. And according to your notes, Eldians injected with Titan spinal fluid retain their basic form and facial structure. Their appearance, even some expressions, remain faintly recognizable." Grisha nodded slowly, his eyes widening. "Yes. That's correct." "Then based on that," Locke continued, "I'm 90% sure that the pure Titan wandering near your home, the one seen before the fall of Wall Maria, is Dina." Grisha froze. His grip on Locke's shoulders tightened again, trembling. "My home? You said Dina was near my house?" Locke nodded once. "Yes. She was seen in Shiganshina district, near your old home. Hannes was there at the time, you can confirm it with him." Grisha's lips parted, but no sound came out. His eyes, wide with disbelief, gradually filled with tears. The raw emotion in them was almost painful to witness. "Dina." His hands dropped slowly from Locke's shoulders, hanging limp at his sides. His gaze drifted into the distance, unfocused. He looked as though his soul had left his body. Memories poured in, their first meeting, her quiet smile, her conviction when she spoke of freeing their people, the day they swore to fight together. Locke said nothing. He simply stood by and waited. Words, he knew, would only cheapen the moment. After a long silence, Grisha drew in a shaky breath. When he finally looked up, his eyes had regained their focus, steady, sharp, and filled with new purpose. "Locke," he said quietly, "I can help you. But on one condition." Locke's tone remained calm. "What condition?" Grisha didn't hesitate. "You must promise to restore Dina to her human form." Locke met his gaze for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "Deal." Their hands clasped tightly, firm and deliberate. "Pleasure to cooperate," Grisha said, his voice low but resolute. Locke nodded. "Likewise." Their grip lingered for a second longer, 2 generations bound not by blood, but by purpose. Even if Grisha hadn't made that request, Locke would have sought Dina anyway. He needed her royal blood, her link to the founding Titan. Without that connection, the Coordinates' full power could never be awakened. But beyond the cold practicality, Locke also felt something else, a flicker of pity for Grisha, for a man who had lost everything and still carried hope. Both of them shared the same ultimate goal, the liberation of the Eldian people. The difference lay in their motives. Grisha sought freedom for all Eldians. Locke sought freedom for himself, and would grant it to others along the way. Grisha didn't notice that distinction, or perhaps he did and chose not to care. To him, anyone willing to fight for Eldia's future was an ally worth keeping. For Eldians in Marley, life was a waking nightmare. They were branded as descendants of devils, forced to live in ghettos, used as tools of war, and executed on a whim. The Restorationists had risen from desperation, not ambition. They didn't ask for wealth or power. They only wanted dignity, to walk the world as humans, not monsters. But Marley's hatred left no room for compassion. And so, rebellion had become their only language. Grisha once believed that if the world could see the truth, if they could just remember that Eldians were human too, the cycle would end. But that belief had cost him everything, his comrades, his wife, his son. Now, standing before Locke, he saw something different. Not naive hope. Not blind rage. But a calm, calculating determination that frightened him almost as much as it reassured him. Locke broke the silence first. We can't stay here. If the Rice family's guards find us near the chapel, everything will be compromised. Grisha nodded slowly. Agreed. The two began walking toward the edge of the forest, the fading light slanting through the trees. For a while, they spoke little. Only when they neared the outskirts of the district did Grisha finally ask, Locke, what will you do next? Locke's eyes were distant. The walls aren't chaotic enough yet. The breach at Shiganshina was just the beginning. Marley's infiltrators are already inside the walls, they'll act soon. Grisha frowned. You deduced that from my research? Locke nodded. Partly. But it's also what they would do if I were them. Marley won't stop until they've secured the founding Titan. They don't know who holds it, but they know it's here. The Rice family hides in the shadows, rarely showing their faces. To make them move, we'll have to drag them into the open. Grisha sighed. Easier said than done. They've spent generations hiding behind false kings and secret ceremonies. The Rice bloodline is cautious to the point of obsession. Locke smirked faintly. Cowardice dressed as caution. Grisha gave him a weary look. You may call it that, but they're still the only ones who can access the full power of the founding Titan. Even if you somehow gain that Titan, it would remain dormant without their blood. Locke's expression darkened slightly. I know. That's why Dina is the key. If we can bring her back, she'll be our bridge to that power. Grisha nodded grimly. Then our goals are aligned. They walked in silence again, their footsteps crunching against the fallen leaves. The wind carried the distant hum of the city beyond the trees, voices, bells, life. A fragile peace built on ignorance. Tell me, Locke, Grisha said suddenly, why do you fight? Is it for freedom, or vengeance? Locke glanced at him, his eyes calm but unreadable. Does it matter? Both paths lead to the same place. Grisha studied him, then smiled faintly. You remind me of someone I once knew. Locke raised an eyebrow. Who? Someone who believed the future could be rewritten, Grisha said softly. And someone who paid the price for believing that. Locke didn't respond. The answer was clear enough in the silence. When they reached the forest's edge, Locke stopped and turned toward the city. The sun was sinking, painting the rooftops gold. He adjusted his cloak, the emblem of the Survey Corps catching the last light. Uncle, he said, his voice quiet but steady, from this point on, keep your distance. If we're seen together, it'll raise questions neither of us can afford. Grisha nodded. Understood. I'll continue my work in the shadows. There's still much to prepare. Locke gave a short nod. Then our paths will cross again when the time is right. He turned to leave, but Grisha's voice stopped him. Locke. He glanced back. Thank you, Grisha said, for giving me hope again. Locke's expression softened for just a moment. Hope isn't given, uncle. It's taken. Then he disappeared into the trees, leaving Grisha standing at the forest's edge, watching the light fade from the sky. He felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense that perhaps, despite everything, the dream of Eldia's freedom hadn't died after all. Chapter 78, Survey Corps Headquarters, inside the commander's office. Have you finished your work? Irwin's voice was calm and composed, as always. Compared to the former instructor, Keith, Commander Irwin was gentler, yet there was something in his stillness that demanded respect. A kind of quiet strength that reminded everyone why he was the one leading humanity beyond the walls. Yes, sir. I've completed my assignment, Locke said, straightening his posture and saluting crisply. I request permission to rejoin the team. Irwin's expression softened into a small smile. Welcome back, Locke. Locke inclined his head slightly. Sorry for the trouble, Commander. It's good that you understand. Irwin leaned back in his chair. Don't expect any vacations this year. You've already used your time off. There was no malice in the words, only measured discipline. Irwin had a clear sense of balance. Talented individuals like Locke were precious, but they also had to be kept in check. Locke nodded earnestly. Understood. It won't happen again. Good. Irwin's eyes gleamed with confidence. Then let me be the first to congratulate you on your return, Vice Captain Locke. Vice Captain? Locke blinked, genuinely surprised. Irwin folded his hands on the desk. I won't speak for the military police or the garrison. But in the Survey Corps, rank is earned through merit. You should understand what that means. Locke hesitated, then smiled faintly. So, in your eyes, I'm just another ambitious soldier trying to climb higher? Irwin's lips curved upward. Ambition isn't a sin if it drives results. I believe you'll prove me right. Locke nodded slowly, voice steady. I won't let you down. Good. Levi will be assisting me more directly for the time being. Until further notice, command of the squad will fall to you. Locke met Irwin's gaze, understanding the weight of the trust being given to him. The commander had seen through him easily, through that burning hunger to ascend, that utilitarian desire to rise. Yet, at 14, such ambition could easily be mistaken for a youthful spirit. It was a convenient disguise. As Locke left the office, the title vice captain echoed faintly in his mind. It felt strange, almost unreal. But he didn't dwell on it. A title alone meant little. Power, real influence, was still far beyond his reach. The hallway was quiet as he made his way toward the team dormitories inside the castle. The air carried the faint scent of soap and polish. Even after months away, the place remained spotless. Locke smirked slightly. Levi's obsession with cleanliness hasn't changed. When he entered the common room, laughter and chatter filled the air. Gunther, ELD, Petra, and Aluo were sitting around the table, trading stories and teasing one another. The moment they noticed him, all conversation stopped. Then, smiles spread across their faces. Locke! You're finally back, ELD said with genuine warmth. We were just saying that if you ever get lured away by Hang again, the squad might collapse. Aluo scoffed. TCH, kids these days, no sense of discipline. Always taking time off for nonsense. He leaned back dramatically. I swear, when I was your age. Before he could finish, Locke reached into his pack and tossed a bottle toward him. Here. Try that instead of talking. Aluo caught it midair, blinking. Wait, this is wine? Locke smirked. Don't worry where I got it. Consider it a peace offering. Aluo's eyes lit up like a child at a festival. Oh, I definitely consider it accepted. He tucked the bottle away quickly, afraid Locke might change his mind. Petra burst out laughing. Even ELD shook his head, smiling. Bribing him with alcohol, huh? Smart move. Just maintaining squad morale, Locke replied with mock seriousness. He set down the rest of his pack and started handing out smaller gifts, little trinkets and keepsakes from his time away. Each one was simple but thoughtful. Petra received a finely carved pendant, ELD a small compass, Gunther a reinforced glove for blade grip. And, of course, there was one last item, Levi's gift. A pair of neatly wrapped height-increasing insoles. Locke couldn't help grinning to himself as he set them aside, waiting for Levi's return. Hours passed, and the sun dipped below the windows. Levi hadn't appeared yet. By dinner, Locke began to wonder if he'd have to wait until morning. Petra noticed his faint disappointment and smiled knowingly. The captain's been working non-stop these days. Sometimes he doesn't come back until after midnight. You'll have to wait if you want him to see your little surprise. ELD chuckled. A gift for Captain Levi, huh? What did you make this time? Height-enhancing insoles, Locke replied casually. There was a pause. Then Gunther blinked. Wait. You're serious? Aluo spat out his drink, laughing. Oh, you're dead. You are so dead. Even Petra couldn't help giggling, covering her mouth. Locke, you're really fearless. ELD leaned forward, smirking. I give it 5 seconds before he hits you. The door creaked open. What's this about me hitting someone? Levi's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. The entire squad froze. The atmosphere instantly shifted from playful to petrified. Levi stood at the doorway, his sharp gray eyes scanning the room. He wasn't angry, yet, but the slight furrow in his brow promised he was ready to be. Locke exhaled slowly, steeling himself. The others gave him silent looks that clearly said your funeral. He rose, grabbed the small package, and walked toward Levi with a calm, almost innocent smile. Captain, I made you something. Levi raised an eyebrow. What is it? Not much. Just something I designed myself. Locke extended the wrapped box. A pair of height-increasing insoles. Levi stared at him for a long moment. The silence in the room stretched thin. Height increasing, what? His tone was low, dangerous. Petra couldn't hold back anymore. She burst into laughter. Gunther doubled over. Even ELD bit his lip to keep from joining in. Locke kept his expression perfectly straight, playing the role to perfection. They're meant to reduce strain on your feet during long patrols, Captain. Added elevation is just a side benefit. Levi's eyebrow twitched. For a terrifying second, it looked like he might draw his blade. Then, without a word, he took the box, opened it, examined the insoles, and tucked them under his arm. Thoughtful, he said simply. Locke blinked. Thank you, sir. Levi turned away, expression unreadable. Enjoy your laughter while you can. Rest time's over. We have a mission. And just like that, the entire squad fell silent again. They scrambled to their feet, laughter fading into disciplined efficiency. Aluo muttered under his breath, he's totally gonna make you scrub the stables for this. Locke smirked faintly, following Levi out the door. Worth it. That night, as the squad prepared their gear, Locke sat quietly for a moment, his mind shifting from humor back to purpose. The title of vice captain, the alliance with Gisha, the shadow of Marley's coming strike, everything was beginning to move faster. But for now, in this rare moment of normalcy, surrounded by his comrades' laughter and Levi's cold discipline, he felt something that almost resembled peace. Even if it won't last, he thought. I'll take it while I can. Chapter 79, Wall Rose, Trost District. Since Wall Maria had been breached by the Titans, Trost had become humanity's southernmost stronghold. Compared to the first breach, this one had struck an even deeper wound into humanity's spirit. Locke stood upon the wall, wind tugging at his cloak, his gaze drawn to the desolate plains stretching beyond. Images from the books he'd read as a child, grim depictions of life ruled by titans, flashed in his mind. Those pages had once felt distant, like folklore meant to frighten the young. Now, they felt painfully real. The chaos below reflected that truth. Refugees poured into Trost from every corner of Walrose. The narrow streets that had once been peaceful were now choked with tents, carts, and desperate faces. Rumors spread like wildfire, some claiming the walls would fall again, others whispering of titans that could disguise themselves as humans. The soldiers of the garrison, once accustomed to idle chatter and long nights of boredom, were now stretched thin. They guarded the gates, patrolled the overcrowded markets, and quelled riots sparked by fear. The stability humanity once enjoyed had shattered completely. Locke's team, Levi's Special Operations Squad, had been chosen for a high-risk reconnaissance mission. They were to move south from Trost, entering the ruins of Wal Maria, to survey Titan activity and search for any surviving civilians. Everyone knew what this meant. The further they went, the less likely they were to return. Still, Locke and his squad stood ready. The harnesses of their ODM gear gleamed faintly under the pale daylight, the hiss of gas canisters echoing softly as they adjusted their equipment. Aluo broke the silence first. "Hey, Vice Captain," he said, a frown wrinkling his forehead. "Do you really think the commander sent us out here just to investigate?" Petra, ELD, and Gunther turned to Locke as well. He didn't answer immediately. The boy's eyes remained fixed on the horizon, calm, focused, unflinching. "Since Commander Irwin gave the order," Locke finally said, "our duty is to obey. Captain Levi has said this countless times." His tone carried no arrogance, only quiet conviction. Aluo opened his mouth to argue, but ELD gently raised a hand to silence him. "He's right," ELD said evenly. "We're soldiers. Our job isn't to question orders, it's to carry them out." The four fell silent. Locke glanced at them and nodded. He respected this squad more than most soldiers in the Corps. They weren't just skilled, they were disciplined, loyal, and deadly efficient. If humanity still had hope, it was built on people like them. Still, in the back of his mind, Irwin's words echoed. "We can't afford to wait any longer. The search must begin immediately. Find them, before they move again." Locke's lips tightened. As expected of Commander Irwin, he thought. He's already begun the counterplay. Irwin might not yet know the truth, that Reiner, Berthold, and Annie were Marleyan warriors, but he suspected enough. His instincts told him there were intelligent titans among them, and he intended to find them. Locke's squad was only one part of that plan. For Survey Corps teams had been dispatched, each assigned to a different walled city under Walrose. Officially, their mission was to scout Titan-infested territory and locate survivors. In reality, their true purpose was far more dangerous: find the enemy before the enemy found them. If any of the infiltrators revealed themselves, Irwin would strike swiftly and decisively. He was a man who would sacrifice 100 lives for the truth if it meant saving thousands later. For humanity's future, he would rather kill 1,000 suspects than let one traitor escape. Locke could still recall the calm determination in Irwin's eyes during their final briefing. It had been unsettling and inspiring. "The commander truly is a monster of reason," Locke murmured under his breath. "What's that, Vice Captain?" Petra asked lightly, adjusting the clasp on her ODM gear. Locke shook his head. "Nothing. Just thinking." He turned back to the view beyond the wall. In the distance, faint shapes moved, slow, heavy, aimless. Titans. Their shadows swayed like giants trapped in a nightmare, stretching endlessly across the plains. The garrison troops nearby had already set up ropes and ladders, preparing the descent. A few soldiers looked toward the Survey Corps squad with open admiration. Everyone knew that once they left the safety of the wall, there was no guarantee of return. Locke felt their eyes but ignored them. He'd long since grown used to that mix of awe and pity. Gunther checked the straps on his horse's saddle. "Everything's ready," he said. ELD adjusted his blades. "Once we're outside, we head south immediately. Avoid confrontation unless necessary." "Understood," Locke replied. The command to depart was given. One by one, the horses began their descent down the lift. As soon as they reached the ground, the gates opened just enough for the 5 of them to slip through. For a brief moment, Locke glanced back at the massive iron gate, the soldiers standing watch, and the faint hum of life inside the wall. Then he turned forward. The air outside was heavy and still. The earth was cracked and dry, littered with debris from homes long abandoned. A lone Titan shuffled in the distance, its massive head swaying side to side, oblivious to the humans who now rode through its ruined hunting ground. They spurred their horses southward. Dust rose behind them like smoke. The wind carried the faint echo of the wall closing behind them, a sound that felt final. Humanity watched them go, unsure whether to feel hope or sorrow. But Locke didn't look back again. His focus was fixed ahead, toward the heart of Wall Maria, toward the truth waiting in its ashes. Whatever lay beyond those ruined cities, Titans, warriors, or something far worse, he intended to face it head on. Because if there was one thing he had learned from Irwin Smith, it was this. To move forward, we must be willing to risk everything. And Locke, more than anyone, was prepared to do just that. Chapter 80, as expected, Wall Maria had already been completely overrun by Titans. Even from a small breach, countless Titans had poured inside, spreading like a flood. Locke had every reason to believe this was Reiner and Bertholdt's doing. Most likely, they had used their Titan abilities to guide the pure Titans within the walls, or worse, used Titan spinal fluid to transform nearby civilians. Whichever method they used, the result was the same. The instant the colossal Titan kicked through the gate, the war between Marley and Parody Island had begun. There was no right or wrong in war, only sides. And neither side could afford to lose. The rulers within the walls might not have realized it yet, but this was no longer an isolated attack. It was an invasion. And it would not end until one side was annihilated. The hiss of gas broke the silence. Locke swung through the crumbling streets, cutting down a wandering Titan that lunged toward him. His blades flashed in the twilight, slicing clean through the back of its neck. The steaming corpse hit the ground with a heavy thud. Landing lightly on a nearby rooftop, he looked over at Petra and the others, who were scanning the perimeter. "Any more Titans nearby?" he asked. Petra shaded her eyes and replied, "Doesn't look like it. It's getting dark, most of them will slow down soon. We should be able to rest tonight." Locke nodded. "ELD, Gunther, did you finish recording our findings?" Both men gave crisp replies. "Yes. We've documented everything. We'll refine the notes and add details after dinner." "Good. Aluo, supplies?" 7 canisters of gas left, Aluo reported, for once without sarcasm. "Food should last us about a week. We can scavenge what we need from nearby houses." Locke gave a curt nod. "Then we'll stay here for the night." "Petra, you're on dinner duty." "Leave it to me," Petra answered cheerfully. For the first time that day, the tension in the air seemed to ease. It had been 4 days since they'd left Trost. 4 days of fighting, scouting, and navigating through endless ruins. They had cut down more Titans than they could count and passed through more shattered villages than they cared to remember. And through it all, silence. No survivors. Not one. Every home they entered was empty. Every town was nothing but dust and broken beams. Even the countryside, once filled with laughter and livestock, had fallen eerily quiet. Only the Titans remained, wandering through the wasteland that was once humanity's territory. Petra and the others had tried to stay strong, but the despair of it all weighed heavily on them. Their jokes faded, their smiles disappeared, replaced by quiet resignation. Locke had seen it before, soldiers losing hope one mission at a time. There was no quick fix. He could only trust that they would recover on their own. Tonight, at least, there was warmth. As the sun sank, smoke rose from the small fire Petra had built. The smell of stew drifted through the half-ruined house. The flickering firelight painted a rare sense of life against the desolation outside. Locke leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Petra, your cooking's improving." Petra smiled faintly. "It's edible, at least." Alyo rolled his eyes. "TCH, rookie, don't praise her too much or she'll start thinking she's a chef." "I won't," Petra replied sharply, glaring at him. That earned a burst of laughter from ELD and Gunther. "Ha ha. Alyo, better be careful, you'll be eating dry rations if she decides to get revenge," ELD teased. "Yeah," Gunther added with a grin. "You offend Petra, you starve." Alyo's expression instantly shifted. "Hey, come on, Petra, you wouldn't be that cruel, right?" Petra pouted. "Maybe I would." Laughter filled the room again. For a fleeting moment, the war outside felt far away. Locke watched them quietly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Good. They're laughing again." Just as he took another bite, a faint creak echoed from below the floorboards. Locke froze. In an instant, everyone's mood shifted. The laughter vanished. Petra, ELD, Gunther, and Alyo reached for their blades without a word. The air grew tense, sharp as drawn steel. Then, CRRK. A section of the floor beside the fireplace shifted. Wooden boards scraped against each other, and a pale hand reached through the gap. Everyone stood ready. Slowly, a figure climbed out, a girl, around 15 or 16, with black hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked frightened, her eyes darting between the soldiers. A human. Petra's expression softened immediately. She lowered her blades and rushed forward. "It's okay. You're safe now." ELD exhaled heavily. Gunther let out a low whistle. "Finally, a survivor," he murmured. For days, they'd found nothing but corpses and ruins. The idea that someone, anyone, had managed to survive in this wasteland brought an almost painful rush of relief. Petra embraced the girl gently, whispering words of comfort. The others watched with quiet smiles. But Locke didn't move. He stood in place, eyes narrowing, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his sword. There was something familiar about her face. Something buried deep in his memory. Then it clicked. His expression shifted. "Emer," he muttered under his breath. He hadn't expected to see her, of all places. The girl stiffened slightly, as if recognizing her name, but said nothing. Locke's eyes darkened. This mission had just become far more complicated than he planned. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 5. Peace.